You're listening to The Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Practical Wealth Show. So I have a great guest today, Tracey Bissett. And the title of this show is Cash Flow Planning for Entrepreneurs Who Want to Stay Afloat in Good Times and the Bad. Okay. And so everyone wants to stay afloat during good times, but the key is, can you stay afloat during bad times? So let me tell you a little bit about Tracey. Tracey's on a mission. I like people that are on a mission to define the world's economic future by increasing the financial literacy of entrepreneurs, and also known as financial fitness. With over 20 years of experience in the financial services industry, Tracey can help entrepreneurs across all industries, both on and offline. And as the founder and chief financial fitness trainer at Bisse Financial Fitness, Inc., Tracey helps her clients understand and improve their level of financial fitness with the goal of increased confidence by using their financial skills so they can be successful in their financial lives. In addition, Tracey is a professor at Centennial College of Business and regularly speaking engagements to increase financial fitness awareness. She also enjoys traveling back to the community and actively volunteers with the Therapeutic Cause of Canada and United Way and Junior Achievement of Ontario. So, and she resides in, we just talked this, Toronto, which is where my wife and I went there in December. So that's one of our new favorite cities. Tracey, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show.
Thank you so much, Curtis. I'm so happy to be here.
My pleasure. So that's cash flow management is key. One of the things that we say is that wealth begins in the mind, but ends up in your wallet or bank account. But the key to that is managing your cash flow. Okay. Most wealth is lost by how people manage cash flow. It's one of the things that we say. So I'm so happy to have you on. So tell them, Tracey, if that missing thing, tell them what I didn't tell them.
Oh, well, you covered quite a bit. I mean, what I love the most is being able to help take the mystery out of money and cash flow. And I do a lot of work with young adults as well as entrepreneurs. And it does all start in your mind, as you mentioned, Curtis. You've got to get your head wrapped around why this is important, and your head wrapped around the fact that you can figure it out with assistance if you need it. Mm-hmm. And then it's going to change your life once you understand how cash flow works.
Let's talk about that. So let's jump right in. So what are let's say the biggest mistakes, 2 or 3 are the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs. Now, guess what? If you're listening to this, don't tune out when I say entrepreneur, because if you've got a home-based business, and you should be running your household like a business. So I just want to expand that. So it's all about cash flow management. If you're in business, you have 2 economies. You got your business economy and your personal economy. So what are the mistakes you see entrepreneurs making when it comes to their finances?
Well, the first is that they kind of put their head in the sand and they just think, I'm not going to get involved with this. I'm not going to spend any time learning. And as I was mentioning, it's just so critical, and it makes things easier once you actually know the facts. I find either individuals or entrepreneurs spend a lot of time worrying about what might be, when if you knew what it was and what the facts were, you would be able to work on solving an issue if you have one. Sometimes the issue is not even as big as you think. But if you don't know, you don't know. So that's the first one. The second big thing I see, and it again pertains to individuals as well as entrepreneurs, completely outsourcing and delegating the financial aspects to a bookkeeper, an accountant, somebody else. If you are running your household or your business, you're in charge, and you've got to know what those numbers say. So yes, get support, get some help, but be in charge of those numbers. So those are the 2 big ones I see.
Yes. Somebody told Oprah, sign all your own checks. Okay. And I've seen people that he's a good guy. We turned it over to him. And I'm thinking 2 different entrepreneurs I know that are a mess and have IRS issues because they just trusted somebody to watch their stuff. And my dad used to tell me, nobody will watch your money like you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's not just around the fraud aspect or someone taking advantage of you, but you can't make good business decisions or good household decisions if you don't know the whole picture and you don't know the details. Make sure you understand and you're asking good questions and always advancing your learning. The more you know, the better you can run your business.
Yes. Yeah. So fraud, those are extreme cases, but yeah, exactly. You got to just know what's going on so you can make better decisions. What are the facts when you talk about getting your head out of the sand? I want to drill down on that a little bit more. What do you mean?
We need to know how much money is coming in, how much is going out, and the timing that it happens. That's kind of the most basic piece. So if we're talking about an entrepreneur, when you generate sales, when does the money come? If you're somebody who does event planning, you're probably taking a deposit up front and then you get payment the day of the event or before. Some other companies, they may be invoicing at time of service or product delivery, but they don't get paid for 30 or 60 days. So what is going to come in, and then when is it coming in? That's really key. Even individuals, if you're thinking about your mortgage payment or your rent payment, you've got to have that maybe on the first of the month, but are you going to have enough cash in your bank account? The timing is so critical. So once we know what's coming in and when, what's going out and when. So in your business, you're going to have some really core common expenses that you have every single month. Then there's going to be some that fluctuate depending on what you're doing. So you put the two pieces together and you're going to see if you have a shortfall or a surplus. Most people are going to have a shortfall. That's just the way that it's going to turn out. Yep. And then you can quantify that and then start brainstorming, what are the ways that I can deal with this? If it's not going to happen for a couple months out, could you hire someone and generate more sales to solve that problem that's going to come up in the future? And oftentimes I'll talk with entrepreneurs and they'll say, oh, I could never afford to hire someone. We could never afford that new piece of equipment that will allow us to fill more orders. But when you sit down with the numbers and you plan it out from a cash flow standpoint, there's actually more possibilities than you could imagine. Then there's talking to your banker. Can you get a line of credit? Can you get an overdraft? Being able to show them a forecast of your cash flow really increases your credibility, both personally as well as a business owner. So they have something then to rely on, that you didn't just come up with this number out of the air. It's based on something, and you actually could show them how it should fluctuate over time, when it could be paid off. So it just allows you to be proactive and manage the situation versus it kind of managing you and you scrambling every day to figure out how you're going to make payroll.
Yeah, so I call it, you want to be forecasting rather than reacting to stuff. That's really a good point, because, if you want to be taken seriously as a business person, businesses keep good records. They know their numbers. See, we're all in the arithmetic business, I call it. And so I was listening to a Dan Kennedy tape. And so sometimes you have to look at your math. So for example, if he was an example I was listening to, whereas in the speaking business, for example, most of the time they'll speak, they put the date on their calendar, he calls it. So you take that date out of inventory. So then a company you'll wait, they'll pay you. You've got to invoice them for the expenses for the airfare to get paid. And so you're the bank. Whereas he said, look, I'm changing that math. I get paid up front, and so now you can, but you got to know your numbers, because you can make a lot of money, or people that will get these government contracts. You get $1 million government contract and puts you out of business because you think you really have $1 million, but you're not getting paid till after the fact. That's why for entrepreneurs, what you said, I think is so important, is the timing of the money.
Yeah, and I was a banker for many, many years, and I've seen businesses go under in as quick as 90 days because they had a lot of sales, but they had to pay all their outflows and they didn't, and all of a sudden they have no way to solve that problem and there's no money coming in. So you can look very profitable on paper on your income statement, your profit and loss, P&L, whatever you want to call it. But if you don't collect any cash, you're going to have a big problem.
Right. Cash flow is the lifeblood of a business. Well, let me ask you this. I'm sure you get this question. My income fluctuates, and it's very hard for me to do this, to give you an income statement, because I don't know what my income is.
Absolutely. I hear it all the time. And I say, well, let's try. So there's always a lot of certainty around the bills you have to pay, because pretty much they're recurring every single month. The only it might be a little bit different is if you have staff that fluctuate their hours based on business volumes, or if you're buying less product or materials that go into a product because your sales are down. But most of them you can plan for. The things that I would suggest people do when they have trouble planning, look back at last year's results. Start there. Do you think this year is going better or worse than that? And then make some adjustments. As well, you're going to take a look at what's going on in the economy where you live, what's going on in the world. Is there something happening that might affect you positively or negatively? Right now, some businesses are booming. We're in a global pandemic, but some are booming, some are kind of stalled. That would have been unforeseen, but I think this is the absolute best time to start planning for your cash flow, because then you need to see, what do you have in reserve? How much
Yep.
did I have in my emergency fund, or how much do I have access to at this time? If you're struggling, maybe it means putting money in personally into the business to keep it afloat. But by knowing the facts, then you can navigate. It's also a really good time if you're looking at some of these government subsidies that are out there. What could I apply for? What am I eligible for?
Mhm,
What could that
mhm,
bridge me to?
mhm.
And if you're booming, cash flow is just as much, because growth is really hungry, and the fuel that it eats to make it go is cash. And so a lot of people think, well, if I can just grow, things are going to be all solved in terms of an issue. It just creates different cash flow issues. And so you've got to be even more on the ball in terms of planning and figuring out how you're going to cover that growth, because it's hungry.
I'm stealing that. You know that, right? Growth is really hungry. I love that. That's awesome.
Well, it's because it's kind of abstract if you're not comfortable with numbers. And so if you just think of it, I kind of think of it like Pac-Man from when I was a
Mhm,
kid and we play
mhm.
that game. It goes along chomping up those little balls, but that's what growth eats. It eats that money. And if you don't have
Right.
any money, you can't grow your team, you can't buy more inventory, you can't do more marketing. You just need a lot of cash to support it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what are the tools that you need or to help better understand your financial position, accessing costs and profits, and, because you got to access that. And then how, I guess the piggyback on that is how to make real money from your business. How do you use that to begin to actually make your business even more profitable? This is the way I like to state it.
Yeah, and so people think that they need fancy accounting software. Like certainly if you're doing regular business, you should use an accounting software. And I don't mean that the business owner needs to enter the information themselves. Certainly hire a bookkeeper part-time, do it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're just starting your business, or you have something on the side, or you're doing it at home and the volume is not that significant, use Excel. You don't need to be fancy, but it all comes back to tracking all of those sales, all of those expenses, and then seeing how they fit together. Because again, without knowing those numbers, you cannot plan proactively. You can't even focus on what are the key issues. So if you're just getting started, like we could sit here with an entrepreneur today, Curtis, and just go through, okay, what's all the money coming in? Let's jot it down on a piece of paper. What's all the money going out, the timing, and we could quickly see without being down to the penny exactly what's going on in the business.
Right.
The other thing I find is that when we do that, we generally are going to see that businesses are not making that much money, which is kind of counterintuitive because people go into this with the dream of making money. They go into it, they're generally passionate about whatever service or product they provide, but they never dreamed they weren't going to get a steady paycheck. And so when I start working with people, I see very quickly they're not getting a regular paycheck. They're kind of pulling money out when they can or when their personal account needs it, and the transfers are going back and forth. It's a little bit random. And then when we do a deep dive on the product or service, we see quickly that they're not making enough money on it. And there's a few reasons that go into that. One, people are reluctant to charge more for their product or service. They have trouble seeing the value that they provide.
Mm-hmm.
And most that I've worked with, their service or product is extremely valuable, but they're reluctant to charge for that value. They don't want to be putting it out there, hey, I charge this much. They don't want people thinking things about them that might be, it's usually in their own minds, not necessarily what the market's
completely
saying.
in their mind. Yes. Stop being guilty about making money.
Yeah. And also you need to do some digging. What's the market going to bear for that? If your competitor prices it cheaply compared to you, is that because they provide less value? Or have they adopted a different strategy? So you need to stand behind that. You need to make sure you cover all those costs. So first of all, we talk about all the costs to provide the product or service, the things you've got to spend if you deliver it. And then you've got to cover overhead like your rent or your insurance or your utility bill. Factor that all in. And usually when I do a deep dive with clients, we see that the margin isn't there. They're not making too much money. And so what could we do to change that? Could we add more value? Could we just move our price? Maybe you've been in business 10 years and you haven't changed your prices since you opened the door. A lot of times you get kind of stuck in just where you are. And so you do need to be vigilant on that. A lot of times your input costs would have gone up, but you didn't move the price out for customers. So lots of, with easy planning, easy looking at the numbers, you can quickly see some things that will help you grow and make changes. And what I find the biggest impact is when you make small modifications to your results in your operation, you can actually make a big change on the bottom line. And most entrepreneurs I find get fixated on the top line, the sales, But you got to focus on the bottom line and make sure you're being profitable.
Absolutely. Because it's easier to focus on what I call, and what we teach clients is what I would describe what you call is efficiency, and is easier to become more efficient so that you keep more of the money than you make than is try to go out and just get more new people. Because if you're inefficient, you're still going to waste most of the money anyway.
Especially if you scale. Now you're just doing it on a bigger basis. You're losing even more money. So get it right when you're small, scale then once you're efficient. The other thing too, businesses that bill after they provide their products or services. I was working with one lawyer, and she had billings of $300,000 a year. She was writing off $100,000 every year because she was being very delayed in sending out the invoices. And then by the time they were getting out there, clients didn't want to pay, which I could understand. If you send me one 6 months later, I don't know if I want to pay that, even though I already pay my bills.
But you already done the service. So it's hard. It's like, yes.
So we talked about,
I have the same issue.
We talked about, why don't you just work 2/3 of the time and bill and have a more balanced lifestyle, and you'll be in the same place. So why do all that work if you're not going to put in a good collection process? So it's all those minor tweaks that could actually make the bottom line improve steadily.
Right. That's interesting, because that's operational, but it starts with an awareness of the numbers so that you can make better decisions within your business. That's really a good point. That's cool. How can you effectively analyze let's talk about people. One of the biggest, and we talk about savings in our practice, but you've got to have access to capital. That's one of the biggest problems I see with residential and also business economies. And what can you? I used to do mortgage, right? I would tell people, look, a mortgage is really a financial statement, and they're analyzing stuff, and you need to realize what the banker wants so that you can present a good picture to them. So, how do you analyze or help people analyze their financial statements to just help them discover what lenders actually care about? Especially, your background's in the banking business, so I think that's really right in your wheelhouse.
So the first thing is to think of your banker as a partner. And a lot of people don't think about their banker that way. And so if you don't like your banker, you don't have a good relationship, find a different one. Would be my first piece of advice. And you can get a referral from a friend, an accountant, a lawyer that you deal with. You got to find someone that you like, and make sure you do build a relationship. And if for anybody listening who's thinking about starting a business, or you've just recently done it, one of the first steps you need to do when you start your business is start building the credit history of the business. And so get a bank account in your business name, get some credit right away, a credit card, a small overdraft, or a line of credit, and start building up that reputation for the business. At the beginning, if you don't have a track record as a business owner, they're going to base that on your personal credit history. But over time, that's going to transition. So that's kind of my preamble, because I see that not happening with a consistency. The next thing you need to know is how do the bankers think? And so bankers are conservative. Bankers are looking for reliability in numbers. They're looking for credibility. And so when you are able to engage in a dialogue about your numbers and be able to talk to them about, we had a bad year last year. These are the reasons we had a bad year, and this is what we're doing differently. They see you in a whole new way then. Oh, I don't know, you need to talk to my accountant. So finding out from them, hey, how does our system work here? How do you analyze things? I think it's really good to start that dialogue with them, hear from them, and then be able to have that conversation.
Oh, that's brilliant. Absolutely.
So when I work with clients, I do teach them the standard financial ratios, the ones that would cover liquidity. Do I have enough cash to pay my bills? Like how leveraged they are, just like in your personal life, how much of my life is funded with debt, the basics, and it walks them through what care about what. So for instance, there's a whole bunch of people who care about whether you have money to pay your bills, your employees, the government, if they're going to get paid on the taxes and all that stuff, your suppliers, but also the banker, if they're giving you an overdraft or a Visa card, credit card, they're thinking about, am I going to get paid?
Right.
When we start thinking about the other ratios, we could go on, but it's getting that framework, not that you know everything about it, but that you can actually have a conversation that speaks to the things that they might be worried about. And anybody who shows up having learned something with a plan for going forward and can speak to the reasons behind the numbers is going to be put in better stead with their banker.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people don't realize, banks are in business to loan money. All right, so they're not doing you a favor, but their number one goal is, can you pay me back?
Yeah, lend money and make money and get repaid. And they are for-profit organizations.
Yes.
They have shareholders that they answer to. And so I also encourage people, banks are good organizations to be a shareholder of because they're protecting their money.
Yes.
So if you're looking
they don't take risk with money. They're not,
right.
Banks are making, I do a seminar. I said, look, Bank of America loaned out like 850, paid interest on 850, paid out interest of 850 million. And then they made like 20 billion in interest off of the loans, right? So that's like a 2,400% return. So banks are very profitable unless they're stupid.
Yes.
Even if they make more money in low interest rate environments. A lot of people like downstairs don't know how banks make money. Because I've talked to people that work in the bank, but they don't understand velocity and, not even counting fractional reserve banking of how they create but they create velocity. They're not even loaning out their money, they're loaning out your money. So the thing is you want to be in partnership because you just want to buy. Here's the thing I tell people, don't borrow money for stuff. God's sake, don't borrow money to cover payroll unless it's an emergency because that's just money down the drain. But you want to borrow money to make money. You want to buy assets that generate new cash flow or a better business. So you've got to be smarter, which is why you have to have and you need to work with somebody like Tracey. You got to have good financial because that's what they're looking for. The numbers tell a story, and I'm sure both Tracey and I can ask people about 5 or 6 questions, and I can draw you your financial statements on a sheet of paper, a la Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I can tell you if it's going to be a happy ending or you're going to crash and burn in life. In 5 minutes, a general like 50,000 foot view, but then you've got to grow into and then that affects your marketing, choose in investing. So people want to invest, your best investments in your business. So for example, we're looking at hiring an assistant. I have a VA, but somebody actually in the office. So I'm going, all right, how much would they cost? If I look at this month's revenue, I'm going to put that into like a separate account and I'm going to invest in an assistant and I'm going to see what kind of rate of return. See, folks, that's investing in your business because if you think about what your time is worth and you can buy back that time so that you're just focusing on revenue producing activities, what is that worth, right? Instead of being cheap. And so I'm saying that because my mentor has been telling me that for a year. So that's, I had to solve that problem. So that's a good thing. Wow, that's really good.
The other thing too is when you have a good relationship with your lender, then if things do happen that are unexpected, there's this goodwill built up. They trust you. They're willing to make the case for you. And I used to say to my clients when I was an account manager, don't come to me after I called you and I'm talking about bouncing checks. Let's talk about it 2 weeks before when you think you're going to have a cash flow problem and let me see what that's around. Can I make an argument to get you a temporary increase to your line of credit or could we put one in place now so that we're proactively working together? You've come and demonstrated your credibility. That's way easier to solve than I'm calling you and we have to return checks because you haven't communicated with me. Now we've broken some of our trust or we didn't have it in the first place. So you view them as a partner and a kind of extension of that, not your best friend though. You're not going to your banker, you're not crying on their shoulder about all the things that are going wrong. You're transparent and credible, but you're not,
Right. I'm so sorry. My wife left me. No. We don't want to hear any of that kind of stuff. Right. That's funny. Yeah. JP Morgan said, what did he say? Man, you don't give a man credit. This is like 1910. So I'm saying a man, but a person credit. It's they have to, it's really who you are. Somebody told me one time, and I used to say this. As a matter of fact, this banker friend of mine reminded me, I forgot I used to say this. It says your credit report is a written verification of your integrity.
The key is somebody's character. Because I can have the ability to pay you and still not pay you because I choose not to. And if my integrity is not strong, I'm not going to pay you. So you've got to worry about someone's character and what they've done in the past. And if they've got a great track record, there's no reason to think that would change.
Right, that would change because leopard doesn't change your spots. And so you have to, like if you haven't paid anybody is not reasonable for somebody to soon look at your credit report, you're going to pay them. But if you have been, and let's say all of a sudden you've been paying, all of a sudden you fall off the cliff. Well, now what happened? Well, you got sick, you got this, you got that. And then you got back on your feet and see. So all of those you can have a discussion about, especially if you have good financials and you have a good story.
Yeah, normally we'd see that kind of fall off the cliff thing, kind of divorce, illness, job loss, something like that. That's kind of our business failure, kind of once in a lifetime. Generally, these things are going to happen, and people are very understanding in those situations and willing to compromise.
For sure. Let me ask you a question. What do you think entrepreneurs need to be accountable for?
They need to be accountable for the strategy and the financial results of their business, coming at it from a financial standpoint. I mean, there's so many things to be accountable for, but as I mentioned, they can't really delegate that authority and that power over the numbers. They need to use the numbers to help them craft the strategy and really grow the business to the goals that they want.
That's awesome. Okay.
We've talked a few things around kind of what mistakes and maybe things that weren't done exactly right. I just want to give a shout out to all the entrepreneurs who are in business, who've been running their business for some time. Most times clients will tell me that they don't understand cash flow and they don't know how to manage it. Yep. And I would definitely say, if you've been around for a little while, you do. You probably don't talk about it like I do. You don't know how to describe it the way I do, but you may not be doing it in the most elegant or efficient fashion, but you do. And to count that as a win, and that's kind of the foundation of your financial education, and let's just grow from there.
Yeah, you can always get better, because most business fail within the first what is that number? 8 out of every 10 business fail within the first 5 years. So if you've been in longer than that, you're in the winner's circle. So now Tracey can help you clean it up and take your business to the next level is what I'm hearing.
Even if you've been around 8 months, you've managed cash flow. So don't say you don't know anything. You can't do anything. Take pride in what you do know and use it as that positive momentum to move to the next thing you can learn.
I always tell people that, 2 + 2 is 4. And see, most of the marketing in the financial services industry, is you don't know enough, you're not smart enough, you can't handle money, give your money to us. And I think that you got to give yourself better credit for that. You do, especially if you're running a business, because you're out there. Yeah, you're out there working without a net, so that takes a lot of heart. So, I mean, you got to use your experts as, you got to build. It's like I'm a big Star Trek fan, right? So you got to have your ready room, and Captain Kirk or Captain Picard brings his advisors in for their opinion, but he makes the final decision. That is how you have to be with your money. So shout out to my Trekkies out there. So what, Tracey, I'm very sorry. What didn't I ask you that you wish I'd asked you? So I figured I didn't miss anything I wanted to tell them how to get in contact with you.
No, I think we've covered the basics. So I would love to hear from anybody who's listening. Send me a note on LinkedIn or comment. It's Tracey with an E, and Bissett has 2 S's, 2 T's. So send me a note. I'd love to hear from those listening what you think, what your experience has been, and to help everyone get started today, because I know sometimes it's hard to get that impetus to take the first step. If you head over to cashcoach.biz, you can download a money meeting agenda, so you can start meeting with yourself, or if you have any business partners regularly. Should be a weekly thing. Your first meeting might be just looking at the agenda saying, where do I start? But get in the habit of making it a regular thing where you review your results, think about your numbers, think about how they impact your goals. So head over to cashcoach.biz to download that money meeting agenda and take that first step today. And that'll be the first of many, I'm sure.
So there you go, guys. You got a good next step. We'll put that in the show notes. Tracey, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending your time with us. I think that, guys, if you don't, I have literally a page of notes, okay? All these podcasts are like free consulting for Curtis. So I get an excuse to talk to brilliant people. So this was a pleasure. I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk and so make sure you connect with Tracey on LinkedIn. Definitely, I'm going to be one of the, since I'm recording this, I'll have already downloaded the cashcoach.biz before y'all get this. This is fantastic. One of the things that we're going to do is we're starting our Practical Wealth, like a membership. We call it the Practical Wealth Nation. So what we'll do, maybe Tracey, and if you've got stuff you want to get into more detail with, we'll do it behind our membership and really teach our people how to get into their money. Because I know there's tons of stuff you can talk about and really get in to help people with and help them engage with you. So we'll have that conversation another time. Tracey, I want to thank you from the Practical Wealth Show for spending time with us today. And
thank you. It's been a pleasure, and cash flow is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So hopefully everybody was hearing my energy and love of the money.
Yes, listen, I'm right here. I get it. If they don't get it, I get it, because that's my favorite subject. Cash flow is king, because if you don't, it's not what you earn, it's what you keep. Okay, and so if you don't pay attention to it, you can make it and not keep it, and what's the point of that? So it's too much work out here being in business and not be using your business to become financially independent. So thanks again, guys. Go out there, make it a great week. Hopefully by the time you hear this, we'll be out of the pandemic and we'll all be back up to full speed. Go out there, make it a prosperous day on purpose. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before